The race for the U.S. Senate in our state next year is expected to be one of the hottest in the nation. Embattled Senator Chris Dodd is suffering from anemic approval ratings after 5 terms in office. And he's now being challenged by a fellow Democrat. And on the Republican side, 3 men are vying for the GOP nomination, and collectively they have raised more money than Dodd, who still is the man to beat. Here are the figures for you. Senator Dodd has raised the most individually, $1.2 million. Former Air Force officer Merrick Alpert has raised $44,000 in 43 days. On the Republican side, former Congressman Rob Simmons is the leader of the pack, raising $750,000. Former U.S. Ambassador to Ireland Tom Foley has raised $530,000, and State Senator Sam Caligiuri of Waterbury has raised $125,000. With us today, Ambassador Foley. Mr. Ambassador, nice to see you back here on Face the State.
Nice to see you again, Dennis.
So when you were here in the spring, you hadn't decided yet. You made that decision. You were leaning toward it, and you started to raise money about a month and a half ago, thereabouts?
Well, I declared on June 4th and started raising money immediately, and in 26 days I raised some $530,000, which was quite a bit more than even I thought I could do.
That's a big figure for a newcomer to Connecticut politics. Did it surprise you?
Well, I think it's indicative of, number one, the interest in this race and the interest among Republicans in replacing Senator Dodd. But also for me it was a great confirmation of my candidacy. So I actually enjoyed the process.
But you were outraised by Senator Dodd, who raised just over $1.2 million.
Correct.
And Congressman Rob Simmons, who raised over $750,000.
That's correct. Both of them, though, raised significant amounts of money from PACs. I raised no PAC money, and I'd like to announce tonight on your show that I'm not going to raise any PAC money during my campaign. I also spent very little money to raise the money, and so my cash on hand actually is the same as Rob Simmons is, despite the fact that he raised quite a bit more money, and he also took, of course, the whole quarter to do it. His candidacy was in place for 3 months.
If you look at the total figures, Republicans raised more money than Senator Chris Dodd. What does that tell you?
I think it tells you that people are unhappy with Senator Dodd. I think there's a lot of energy into this race, and I think nationally the level of concern over what's going on in Washington and what the Democratic Congress is doing from a policy point of view is energizing people who contribute to campaigns and support Republican candidates for November 2010.
Let's put yourself in the Senate right now, hypothetically speaking. If you were there right now, what kind of bill would you introduce to jumpstart the economy?
Well, let's rewind to the fiscal stimulus bill, or supposedly fiscal stimulus bill that was passed in the first quarter. I would not have voted for that bill. That bill was only a very limited amount of stimulus and an awful lot of other programs that were sort of on a Democratic wish list that were pushed through in the guise of a crisis.
What would you have proposed?
Yeah, well, I would have proposed separating the two and take the part of it that was actual stimulus, which is short-term spending, like extending the period over which people can collect unemployment benefits and a number of other things, to get money in the economy right away, tax credits, and taking the other things that were not stimulus-related but were Democratic agenda items, such as raising taxes on upper-income taxpayers, long-term infrastructure projects where the money's not going to be spent for 3 and 4 and 5 years in some cases. I think it was cheating, essentially, and I think that the impact of the latter ones they're going to hurt the U.S. dollar, they're going to hurt us long-term economically, they're going to cause inflation, they're going to result in burdens on our children.
Let's talk about Sonia Sotomayor, Supreme Court nominee, nominated by President Obama, going through her hearings right now in Washington. How would you vote? Would you vote to confirm her?
You know, I've seen all the concerns. It's the law of the land now. I think that there are reasonable restrictions in some cases on the most extreme parts of the abortion issue. So I think it should be left alone.
Let's get back to the race for a moment. What is the budget for this race as you look ahead for the next year and couple months?
Well, it depends. It depends on whether or not there's a primary. It appears now that there will be. And it depends on whether or not Senator Dodd is in fact the Democratic nominee. And it depends on the issues that arise in the interim. But I think it's a $10 to $12 million race in the best case for a Republican to win the seat.
And how much do you think he would spend in a primary? I mean, do you expect to have to buy advertising and all that?
Well, if there's historically, primary people have spent anywhere from as little as $500,000 to $1 million in a primary to upwards of $3 million in a primary.
You know, there are a lot of people who don't know who you are. Yep. What are you doing to change that?
Well, first of all, this summer I'm going all around the state to check in with Republican town committees. I'm going to go to fairs and get out and meet the people because I want to understand the views and positions and perspectives of people from all over the state of Connecticut. So I'll get to meet a lot of people one-on-one through that process. I think as the campaigns heat up and there's more media coverage, that people get to know my name. And of course, when you get into a primary or certainly a general election where the candidates are actually buying media, I think everybody will know the candidates quite well at that point. What makes you a better choice for the Republicans to run against Dodd than Simmons or Caligari? Well, I think I can do a better job for Connecticut in the U.S. Senate. I think given my 25 years of experience, work experience, and my degree in economics and business administration, having run businesses and created jobs, I understand how businesses and the financial markets and the banking sector and government all work together to make the economy work well and to create jobs. I think that will bring me a capability and an ability to make a contribution in Washington that none of the other candidates have. But against Senator Dodd, I'll be much more focused and much more energetic on the issues that directly involve Connecticut and residents of Connecticut.
You know, if you become the nominee and then you run against Senator Dodd, basically you're going to be trying to convince the voters to fire a senator they've had in there for, since 1980. What kind of arguments, why should Senator Dodd be fired by the voters?
How about retired?
Or retired, or why should he be forced, well, if you lose your forced into retirement?
Listen, I think Senator Dodd appears to have been seduced, if you will, by the Washington insider phenomenon, and he has not been in Connecticut much. He hasn't been tending to the needs and of his constituents and of this state. And on top of that, I think that there have been some issues raised that at least give the appearance of conflicts of interest, things that are questionable in terms of the integrity of a public representative, and I think that's upset people, and I think it's made people less likely to vote for him. One of your Republican colleagues, Senator Caligari, has said that he will only run for 2 terms if he's elected. Would you make a similar pledge? Do you think that part of Senator Dodd's problem is that he's been in for so long? I think there are more important issues in this race than how long somebody's going to serve. I'm not sure why Sam has done that. I don't think that particularly bears on this race. I don't think the problems that people have with Senator Dodd is that he's served too long. I think it's how he's served most recently. What would you say is his most egregious thing that he's done while he's been in office? Well, I think if you're, this wouldn't apply to any U.S. senator, but if you're the chairman of an important committee like the Senate Banking Committee, and have oversight responsibility for the financial institutions, I think it's clearly, it's not illegal, but I think it's corrupt that you would take contributions from PACs that represent those financial institutions and that industry. I just think it's improper. It's an imperfection in our system, but if I were in this position, I would not accept those contributions. There are some who would argue, he has a lot of seniority. He's part of a Democratic majority with a Democratic president. What could a freshman Republican bring Connecticut if you were part of a minority party? Well, as I said, my experience and my perspective on the issues.
But what could you get done realistically in that kind of environment?
Well, I think that a Republican, another Republican, particularly with my experience in the Senate, could help temper some of the policy misdirections that I think we've already seen in Washington, and it looks like we're likely to see. I think the health care plan that came out of Congress yesterday is seriously flawed, and is not good policy, and will not result in improving the health care system, as many people want to have happen in this country. But I think somebody with my background and experience would help make a policy like that more tailored toward what is the right solution for the American people.
Have you had conversations with folks at the National Party about this race, and what do they tell you?
Well, really the way the party works here is that the Senatorial Campaign Committee handles the candidates for the Senate. So I've been in touch with them, I've met with them a number of times, and they're being very helpful.
And they're encouraging. What kind of big Republican names might you bring here to campaign on your behalf?
Good question.
How to raise money?
Well, Newt Gingrich is here for the Prescott-Bush dinner a few weeks ago. There are a number of them. Mitt Romney, I think, is interested in helping candidates.
You worked for the most recent President Bush. Would you have him here in Connecticut, do you think? I know I asked you this question before, and you said, well, at this moment he's not very popular.
I'm not sure that would be an asset.
The first President Bush?
Certainly the first President Bush is well liked. When Joe Lieberman ran last time, and the President asked him what he could do for him, he said something to the effect, well, you could let me punch you in the face on public television or something like that. So.
What about Governor Sarah Palin? Would you have her here campaigning for you?
We wouldn't agree on many of the issues. So I mean, I think she's a very interesting lady, and I think that the fact that she ran for Vice President of the United States is admirable, and I think she'd be an interesting person to have in the state. So I would welcome her presence here.
Good enough. All right. Ambassador Tom Foley, candidate for the U.S. Senate. We'll see you back here again as the campaign gets more and more exciting with more people involved and a lot of money.
Yep. Thanks, Dennis.